The history of the first homeowner grant goes all the way back to last century. To be fair, it was 1999. Nevertheless, the story's roots are very interesting, and one could say its existence is intertwined with the behemoth that is the Australian property market. For years, many have cried the FHOG to be unfair, claiming it pushes up house prices and will keep future generations out of the market. However, the FHOG has now helped a couple of generations into the property market. Remember old Prime Minister John Howard? In the 1998 election, Howard promised not to introduce a GST. Tax is a highly debated issue, and it's kryptonite to anyone who wants to create tax reform. The latest example of that being Kevin Rudd in whenever the election was 4 or 5 years ago. Howard and then Treasurer Peter Costello struck a deal with the Democrats to introduce a GST on July 1, 2000. Okay, so here's the Aussiest thing ever, right? Cabinet papers, which were later released, show that they actually had a discussion about what was going to happen with the pubs. Back then it was a big furor. What happens at 12 o'clock AM on July the 1st when the GST kicks in? Like, what happens if the pub's still open? Do they shut the pubs early and shut the tills and re-go again? How do they figure out which beer is going to be taxed under GST and which isn't? Anyway, they fixed the beer problem, but then they had one more big problem. I should clarify here that tax reform just doesn't have two problems. There was a whole myriad of stuff that had to be overcome. Anyway, the big problem was that the GST meant that people building their homes were going to pay more. So to make it more palatable, the first homeowner grant bribe was introduced, and it was a piece of political magic. For anyone building a new home, they will get a one-off $7,000 payment by the federal government. It kept the politicians happy, it kept the voters happy. It was a good deal. It was such a good deal that it's still here today, available for the first home buyer to access. More on that later on. Originally, these grants were funded by the federal government, and it was the respective state government's job to do all the administrative stuff. It was also meant to be a once-off, a deal to get the voters on board, but with any good once-off government initiative, it turns out to be not once-off. Sorry guys, I'm going to interrupt you for a few seconds here. I've got 3 quick things to mention. 1, if you like this story, let us know by liking and subscribing. 2, if you're a first home buyer in Victoria and you want to get access to a private community with all the info you need to get into the first home, just ask in the comments below to join and we'll send you out the link. Number 3, this channel has no sponsors, so I can say what I want. If you need help with a home loan, however, I am a mortgage broker. That's how I make a crust. Please get in touch. Back to the video. Cheers. Fast forward to 2008. Holy crap, it's another financial disaster. We're talking about a full-on world banking crisis here. All of a sudden, all these banks are just starting to go bankrupt in America. No one knew what was going on. All we knew was that it was a big deal. By 2008, much of the world's commerce had globalized, and world commerce was only there because the world's banking system was there for the money to transfer around. A functioning economy relies on cash moving around, so yeah, this was a really big deal. Enter K. Rudd and the word stimulus. It's probably too long for a lot of people to remember, but that was the first time I really heard the word stimulus being used in that way. In the pandemic, we did the same thing with all the handouts with other initiatives like not paying your mortgage and the taking whatever super you wanted for whatever reason. In the GFC, there was also a number of initiatives to get the economy kicking, and that was the stimulus. We had the Pink Bats initiative, good for energy, good for savings, creates jobs, until people's houses started burning down. We had all the schools being built to keep the tradies employed. And we kind of had that thing in the latest pandemic stimulus with the $25,000 once-off grant to people that were building, which is actually very similar to the FHOG. Anyway, the point I want to make is that in 2008, the government went crazy in the first home buyer grants. In Victoria, just to give you an idea, you could get up to $29,000 in grants to build your first home if you were outside of Melbourne. These are crazy numbers considering the prices of properties in regional areas back then. At this point, I'm not going to dwell too much on any more of the specific changes because there are a lot of them. I mean, an eye-watering amount of things have gone down. To give you an idea, in Victoria right now, there's 6 or 7 different things first home buyers can access. FHOG, home builder family, first home guarantee. The history of the FHOG leads us to a bigger issue which concerns all of us. One that's in plain sight, but we're seemingly powerless to do anything about it. It shows us that the government will ultimately go to any measure to backstop the property market, and this has been a part of the success of the property market and both the first homeowner grant. On one side you have this thing where the government are going to come to the rescue and allow first home buyers to get into the market, but On the other side, there's still the debt, and it's increasing with the ever-increasing property prices. It's as if there's some invisible reality cloak here that they can't see. Let me spell it out as to how I see things right now. If you're an average first home owner and you're 30 years old and the average loan is 30 years, you're going to be 60 by the time you've wiped out your debt. Then there begs the question of, will there be enough time for people to retire? Maybe, if you want to work till you're 80. And then the next question is, what happens next for the people to be able to afford a larger debt? And the most obvious thing here is 40-year loan terms. That's been bandied about for a while in the finance area. Other way, it's not good. It just makes things worse long term. There's also another choice though, to rent. But then you've got to think about how you're going to live the life you want and get the things out of it by renting. So that's not a viable option for most people. We've put ourselves in a bit of a tangle here. The government keep coming up with new schemes and we ultimately just keep pushing the price of property higher. So what happens? Do we ultimately just keep on pushing it higher to the point where some future generation can't get the home loan and therefore they'll just not be able to get their own home? Do we find a way of suppressing house prices for a while until incomes inflate to be able to improve the affordability? I hope there's a way out of this without too much pain. Either way, there's going to be winners and losers everywhere, and I feel like there's a growing amount of losers. If you like this story, guys, please help us out by subscribing to the channel. If you need help with a home loan, find us via the links below. Till next time.